Welcome back to Paths to the Past.
Yes, welcome back. Yes, and in today's episode, we're going to be picking up the old Woodhead Line from Coat Bank Bridge behind me, down to Hazlehead Station and all the way down to Bullhouse, about 1¾ miles in that direction. Yes, it's the second episode in our exploration of the old Woodhead Line from Dunford Bridge down to Sheffield. In the previous episode, we got down from Dunford Bridge this far, so now we're going to explore the 1¾ miles down to Bullhouse Bridge. Now, this is an area full of fascinating railway relics and full of amazing stories of happenings that occurred on this line since its opening in 1845. In fact, so much did we find that we've decided to split this video into two parts so we can fully appreciate all the events and railway remains we found along this 1¾ miles. So just a couple hundred yards down from the bridge where we started, we can start to see some of the metal posts there that form the boundary of the railway's property. And about 50 yards further on, as we trek through the undergrowth here, we can see metal posts there. Just above the River Don beneath us. It's quite a high embankment this, what do you reckon? About 70, 80 feet?
Yeah, very high, yeah.
And the River Don looking serene beneath us. And what is this find? I'm sure somebody will be able to tell us what this was used for. Two bolts, big bolt there, piece of wood screwed into it. What was that, folks?
So here we have Magic Wood Cafe. So if you're walking down, a nice place to stop off. I think it's only open at the weekends or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think.
Yeah, open more in the summer, but yeah, lovely place to stop off if you are walking, cycling or running up and down this trail. So we start to see evidence of this being a very busy part of the line. You've got those wooden posts within this wall, and I have read that very soon up this trail it was 7 lines in width. Post here seems to be entangled with a tree. Who's going to win that argument? But you can see there where some of the cable carriers were when this line was electrified in the 1950s. We'll turn some of these sidings here into something called Magic Wood. It's about 200 yards long, and it's for children to have a mystical nature experience. And at different times of the year, they put up themed decorations. This is coming up to Halloween, so we've got a spooky theme at the minute. We promised you railway relics on here, and here we have. Metal tubing, which probably held a post at some point, signal post maybe, because the station is just a couple of hundred yards on from here. Relics of the Woodhead Line.
Few more posts.
Yeah, if you are a fan of old concrete railway posts, this is the place to be.
Hazlehead Station then, John. First stop after Dunford Bridge?
Yeah, indeed it was, but it wasn't when this line was opened. But the people of the area petitioned to have a station here, so one was open in, I think, 1846. But then it was closed again in 1847. There were a few stations along here, one at Oxspring, one at Thurgerland, that were open briefly and then closed. But then it opened again in 1850 and ran for about 100 years until closing to passengers and then goods in 1964. But yeah, all beside us here in what is now Magic Wood, there were several lines. I say about 7 across here. You wouldn't think it now, as Dawn said, very peaceful, very picturesque part of what is now the Trans-Pennine Trail, but once throbbing with railway life. In fact, I think I read on a display board down there, there were in about 1920 104 trains going eastbound, which is that way, towards Sheffield and Hull, per day. And just above this wall there was once situated the Hazlehead signal box, a picture there from 1982 with a train passing, and another photo from slightly earlier showing the box perched high up above the line. We did find a tragedy occurring at the box in 1910. An engine driver by the name of George Sprigg, been with the Great Central Railway 30 years, stepped out at the end of his night shift and into the path of a passing train. He was killed, leaving a wife and 3 children, and is buried in Burngrave Cemetery in Sheffield. And we have what I think are the back of the goods sidings here. Concrete wall that goes along for a couple of 100 yards. What's Dawn found? We're going to have a look what's in here. Now I think it was about this point where the main Manchester down to Sheffield line veered off, and in 1860 a little branch line was built out to somewhere called the Hepworth Iron Company, about 1.5 miles up towards Holmfirth and Crow Edge.
There's actually some wires here, but I think that's modern day electricity.
Yes, yeah, it's a mast.
Looks like a mast, yeah.
There's an old board there. It doesn't say whether police come in here and investigate, keep out. You can see the remains of the Hepworth Iron Railway stretching north here for about 1.5 miles. There was also a tunnel about 450 yards long. Unfortunately today most of it is inaccessible by foot, and it's on private land anyway. In 1960, the year the line closed, a rail tour journey took place, and you can see the train here up at the far end at Crow Edge. I did manage to find one fatality that took place on the line, and that was a Mr. Wainwright of Hazlehead, who seemed to be walking up to the ironworks, probably to go to work. When going through the tunnel, a train approached him from the other direction, squashed him up against the side. He managed to get out of the tunnel, but some of his limbs were badly crushed, and he died a couple of days later. So you can see here how the line really widens out. We've always wondered, haven't we? We say we run up and down here very regularly, and some of the trails quite narrow. Then this bit just opens up, doesn't it?
Woo, look at that.
Over here we have something rather special that we hadn't noticed before in all the times we've come up here. Now, my initial impression was that this looked from the latter part of the 20th century, but somebody on the local Facebook group suggested it was a tank ramp, but we couldn't find any actual empirical evidence it was. And then we had an update just as I was editing this video. We're thinking some sort of loading bay to do with the Iron Company Railway. I mean, it does look actually a lot more recent, because the Iron Company Railway closed in the 1950s or 1960s. But it does look like a loading platform tapering off there, down beneath. And this relic here, presumably from the railway. So one poster reckoned that when the line was closed, the ramp was built for Hepworth Refractories, a subsidiary of the Hepworth Iron Company, to enable their lorry to offload ganister into railway wagons. They later built a ramp in the goods yard at Penistone and used that instead.
So at this point in the journey, we have two paths that led into the station.
Yeah, just to our left as we're going down the trail, there's a path that led down to what was the Railway Hotel, which was opened in 1860, a very busy place, and we found some stories associated with that building. And then just a little bit further on from the station, off the main road, there was another path leading round and into the back of the station. So let's go and investigate the path that led down to the Railway Hotel. And I think there must have been some sort of crossing here across the line to get to the station on the other side, because it was quite a dangerous place, as we shall show from some stories we found.
It's not a recent place, I don't think.
Yeah, there'll probably been a gate here at some point. Hinge still there. Not any longer. And this is the path down to the Railway Hotel. So for what looks like a very small, quiet rural station, this Railway Hotel looks quite substantial. I do know it was very heavily used during the turn of the 1800s and 1900s when the reservoir at Langsett was being built. I think quite a few people visiting, maybe inspectors, etc., were staying here.
So we've had a recent freefall.
Oh dear, yes.
Probably the winds we had yesterday.
And the banking on this part, which is still built by the contractor mentioned in the last episode of Mr. Nicholson, is getting increasingly steeper. And once we get onto the other side of the main road here, it gets quite steep indeed. We have a report here of a licensing request from 1861 for the Railway Hotel. Some people didn't want a licence granted, but it was stated that the hotel will be used extensively by people visiting Hazlehead Station. You can see here where the original railway bridge would have crossed, and I think I've got a photograph of a train crossing this in the days where the line was in use. Quite a busy road for cars now. It's nice to see some of them observing the speed limit. So now walk you up to where the original entrance lane to the station once stood. There was probably once a gate across here, providing access to the railway station up here. We do still have in existence today the original station house and the station master's house. I think I found by digging through the old newspaper reports that the station house was up for sale for about £5,000 in 1977, and then around 2007, I think, I'll put the right date on screen, it was on sale for about £180,000. I wonder how much it would go for now. I think from a distance here we can see a station clock there. Not sure if it's the original or reconstruction one that somebody bought when they bought the old station. Yeah, you can see across the main road here quite how steep the banking got at this point. This was, as I said, still part of Mr. Nicholson's contract. So well done to all the navvies who built that. I'd like to remember all the people associated with the railway as we explore it. So after that little detour, we're now heading back up the track and onto the Trans-Pennine Trail and the track bed of the old line. Back on Trans-Pennine Trail, heading east. So yeah, we have the station master's house just to our right, which you can see from the main line, and then just a few yards beyond that, the actual station building. We have a concrete base here with metal bolts in it and some moss. Despite its peaceful setting today, Hazlehead Railway Station has seen many incidents over the years. In 1874, a goods train collided with a passenger train, fortunately only minor cuts and bruises to individuals. In 1880, the wheels of a carriage of a salt train derailed and caused blockage of the line for several hours. 1887, the axle of a goods wagon broke and threw the wagon into the field, blocking both the up and down lines again for several hours. In addition to the death of George Sprigg, the engine driver I mentioned, which occurred back at the signal box, I managed to find the death at this station of 3 other railway servants. 1895, Harry Davey, a stoker, left the engine, walked across the track and was crushed by a special coming down from Liverpool. 1898, a young porter by the name of Irvin Barlow stepped onto the track and was killed by an express train. His body was removed to the Railway Hotel. An inquest was held there, and you can find the notes of that inquest still online today. We learn that Barlow was 22 years old and well loved in the town of Mottram, where he'd grown up, and was a Sunday school teacher. Finally, in 1905, a railway servant by the name of James Haig, who lived in nearby Softley cottages, was oiling some points. Noticed too late that the fast train was coming from Penistone. It knocked his arm, but he died from internal injuries a couple of hours later. He was aged 35. Spare a thought for those people next time you pass this way. We know the name of the station master during this turbulent period, a man called Alfred Ellison, who retired in 1911 with a handsome gold purse, it is said. We're now about to pass over the bridge of what is called Wham's Road, and the way the traffic comes down it, it's appropriately named. So next episode in this series will take us from Wham's Road, 1.3 miles, all the way down to Bullhouse Bridge. We found loads of evidence of railway remains and some fascinating stories of the people who worked and lived by the railway in the decades it was in operation.
So don't forget to join us next time, where every journey begins with a path to the past.